So, in this short video, I want to talk about the recent Archon Quests in version Luna 4. More so than an analysis, this will be a short recap and my first impressions as someone who focuses on the lore of this game, so don't expect anything crazy. I will mainly talk about some details I noticed and what it could mean for the future story and lore. I will also be giving a very quick recap of the Archon Quest, but I won't really focus on explaining how all of it happened. There is a lot to talk about in this new version, so in this one I'll be focusing on the Archon Quest, but I expect to make videos about the artifact lore and maybe even the World Quest as well, once I finish them. So just know that I haven't done the World Quest in the new areas just yet, so this video won't contain any information from these quests. This video will obviously contain huge spoilers, so please click off if you haven't played the 2 Archon Quest yet. But without further ado, let's get into the extremely quick recap. So at the beginning, our group decided to finally go and confront Dottore, but he managed to capture the Traveler and disappeared. He was basically in possession of the Free Moon's power and was ready to use the third artificial moon he created to achieve this. Meanwhile, we saw Columbina traveling through the place inside the Moon Gate, where she visited various moments in recent history. Interestingly enough, time inside this place was slowly going backwards, and each moment in history she visited was further and further away from the current timeline. Through all of this, we learned that she was influencing us all the time through Kawaki, and even though many people, including myself, assumed that Nicole was the one behind some of these events, it turned out that, for example, the broken vase we saw was in fact Columbina. So that was the true identity of our mysterious helper. Eventually, she even traveled far enough to give birth to Lunatar as a part of her soul to help us guide her toward the present. After that, she even met with the 3 imprisoned moon goddesses, who were trapped in this weird place by Nibelung. Still, there seemed to be no way of getting out of this place, since even the 3 moon goddesses found a way of getting out. Despite all of the hurdles along the way, Columbina eventually managed to find a solution. The 3 moon sisters gave away their authority, and this way they sacrificed themselves, since they perished soon after. Columbina combined the authority of the 3 moons within herself, she left it on the frost moon, and turned her body into the Kawaki that fell upon nod-krai, and transformed the land into the form we see today. This way, she basically separated herself into 3 parts. A part of her soul was within Lunatar, guiding both the Traveler and herself, serving as an anchor that transported her soul into the future. Her body was technically spread across nod-krai, and her newfound authority over the 3 moons stayed on the frost moon, but more on that later. Meanwhile, we all focused on both bringing the Traveler and Columbina back, as well as finding a way to fight Dottore. The Traveler was trapped in an energy field, created and manipulated by Dottore, but was eventually rescued by the Wanderer. So the only thing left was to find out how to bring Columbina back. Since she left us many clues in the present, we knew she was alive, but didn't know where she was and how to bring her back to nod-krai. Sandrone then came up with a plan to calculate the ward formula, by which she could predict the fate of the ward and find out how to save Columbina. Then we started our fight with Dottore, which we were losing. Sandrone sadly even died during the fight, but fortunately, we managed to bring the moon close enough to Teyvat, complete the word formula calculations, and bring Columbina back by bringing all 3 parts of her together. And once we were reunited, we were able to defeat Dottore. At the very end, we even visited the moon together with Columbina, and read the travel logs in our spaceship, and saw Teyvat from the distance. Okay, that was a very quick and simplified summary, but with all of that out of the way, we can finally focus on individual pieces of story and lore. Well, let's start with the elephant in the room, the title screen at the very end of the True Moon Archon Quest. Well, usually in Genshin, at the end of the Archon Quest, we get the title drop and that's it. But this time, if you noticed, we actually got 2 title drops at the end. The first one was normal, and there was nothing strange about it, but the second one was different. The title started flickering, and it was weirdly disrupted, corrupted and so on. You could even hear a sound very similar to the one that Dottore made during the boss fight, as if time was being rewinded by Dottore. It's also interesting that even the page showing the local legends seems to be somehow distorted by this weird glitch. Hard to say what this could imply. But well, with that said, let's take a look at what the distorted screen and such could mean. I think there is a ton of possibilities of what exactly this could mean, but they can essentially be summarized into 4 categories. The first possibility I see is that he could have simply escaped at the last moment, and since we never actually saw his dead body, or anything like that, I think it could absolutely be the case. The second possibility involves the fact that, since he was in the possession of the 3 moon's power, he could have somehow manipulated us into a false reality where we defeated him, when in truth he won, and we simply live in this illusion, or he simply fooled us in some sense, and there is another him or something of that sort. The third possibility I see is that it could have something to do with the 4 shades finally intervening in Teyvat. And the last one is that this could simply be a little Easter egg that's meant to give us a feeling that something isn't right, and it has nothing to do with Dottore, the shades, and has no real story or lore implication. So, is Dottore dead? I don't think so. I believe that he at the very least escaped and is planning something to do with Irminsul, since the devs hinted in the past at the possibility that he will still burn Irminsul, just as was shown in the Winter Night's Lazo. And also, is Dottore, and such tactics are something to be expected from him. Since he couldn't recognize the Wanderer during the Archon Quest, it seems like at this point, he still didn't have the power to influence Irminsul, as that power doesn't seem to be connected to the 3 moons. So maybe that would be the next step for him, if he is still alive. That said, I don't think that what we are living right now is just a simulation. There just seems to be too much detail in the ending for that to be the case. Stuff like Sandrone's notes, voice lines of Columbina, edits to the Velkin moon card, and such led me to believe that what happened truly happened. Maybe not in the exact way we saw it, but I don't think it's likely that what we saw was completely fake. Another interesting note is that I don't think we ever truly found out what the curse he put on us did, so maybe, just maybe, he used this curse to fool us into thinking we defeated him, when it didn't truly happen. But this is just a huge speculation. Maybe it was just meant to stop us from getting out of nod-krai. And with that, I'd like to move on to another topic, which is Sandrone, her origins, and her role in the quest. So in this quest, we finally got the confirmation that she's Elaine's creation, meant to resemble his dead sister Marianne, which is pretty cool, and when I read her journal, I was getting pretty emotional. Anyway, it was great, so I recommend reading that. But if you want more detail on the theory that was confirmed here, you can take a look at my other video about this. Anyway, in the quest, she decided to take another look at Rene's word formula and use it to calculate Columbina's position and to find out how to save her. But if you want to know more about the word formula, you can also check out other videos where I discussed it in the past, so this video doesn't take an hour to finish watching. Anyway, another thing that's pretty cool is the lore contained in the new outfit that the Traveler got. There it was implied that the Traveler and their sibling may have been originally sent on a mission to terraform a planet to be suitable for a new life. The description literally says, reshaping terrain, adjusting the air, rebuilding an ecosystem. These were simple tasks for a pioneer vessel meant to bear the spark of civilization. But it sounds like this chosen place was not meant to be Teyvat, at least not originally. The planet they passed was never a destination, since its star had already entered its twilight. Its biosphere and atmosphere had been utterly destroyed. The surface held nothing but cooled masses of molten rock. And since we know from this quest that the siblings passed Teyvat on their way in the spaceship, this planet they passed should be Teyvat. The most important piece of information here is probably the fact that the two siblings seem to, in fact, not just travel through space as they please, but instead travel with a purpose to function as a spark of new civilization. By the way, speaking of spark of civilization, that's literally what Rene's note in the new Archon Quest was about. He said, please take a look at this diagram. Beneath the most hidden of all hidden, the number of cycles, that is, the number of higher particles, can now only be 4. No new word cycle can be generated through reconciliation. In other words, the end of this current samsara is the end of infinite light. The sparks of civilization are all but extinguished, unless we begin to consider introducing variables beyond the existing system. After all, the world is itself the external manifestation of a dream, and therefore, so here I think that Rene is talking about the same thing. The fact that there were these sparks of civilization brought by the outsiders possibly, and they are now being extinguished after so many cycles. He thinks that there will only be 4 cycles, and as we know, he believes that we are now in the 4th cycle. These cycles are Hyperborea, Notlantia, Remuria, and Crown Area, which means that this is the last samsara, and there will be no more after this one, unless some variable intervenes. Perhaps the Traveler and their sibling can be considered such variables, but besides that, there is much speculation needed to figure anything out, so let's leave this point here. There is another interesting part in the description of this outfit. For several weeks or months, intense heat and light had marked the star's final brilliance. After that, it had been reduced to a cold, dim dwarf. It ran a quick calculation on when the event had occurred. What a coincidence. The radiation trapped in the planet's crust indicated that the supernova had erupted the very year the twins were born. Naturally, the two events had nothing to do with each other. No one could ever celebrate the birth by burying an entire world with it. Such levels of extravagance and cruelty simply did not exist. Even though it said all that, it sounds like a bit too much of a coincidence to be just that. And if it's true that basically someone celebrated the twins' birth with the destruction of an entire world, that's pretty crazy. There are numerous theories in my mind as to what this could imply. Aside from the twins' unknown noble origins, honestly, even though this doesn't have as much to do with this piece of lore, my first thought was that maybe, just maybe, the siblings came from the same place as the primordial one, who could have come here to terraform Teyvat for humans. Which would explain a lot of things if this was the case. place, and the twins were meant to search for a different place, but somehow arrived on Teyvat because of their emergency landing. But honestly, this new lore opens up so many possibilities that I won't be listing them all here one by one, though I'm very interested in seeing the theories that the rest of the community comes up with, and if you have any speculation of your own, I would really like to read that in the comment section down below. What was also really cool was how much of the outer space and false sky we have actually seen. The sky, while not as nice as the fake one, actually doesn't seem as dangerous once the red effects of splitting the sky aren't present. Actually, since Dottore wanted to show off by opening the false sky, he allowed us to pull down the frost moon, which ultimately led to our victory. And interestingly enough, now there is a new moon in the skies of Teyvat, which you can permanently see in the game now. And when we are on the moon, we could very clearly see the planet of Teyvat and all the places we've been to before. So for those people who still doubted if Teyvat was really a planet and thought it was flat, this is actually conclusive evidence. Another interesting thing we learned in this quest was about Columbina, her true nature, her origins and such. Actually, her origins were revealed in the character profile, partially. There it was revealed that the primordial sea once cradled her before she was born, making it very possible that someone or something created her using the primordial sea's powers. Maybe it's connected to the previous Hydro Dragon who ruled over the primordial sea, or Nuvilat, but I doubt it, because the time doesn't fit. But now we also know the reason behind Kovaki's unique presence in nod-krai is that it was Columbina's power to begin with, which also explains a ton of things, since there were a lot of unanswered questions about Kovaki before this. Now, if I were to quickly change the topic, we also got some lore about Nibelung and what happened to the three moon sisters Arya, Sonnet and Canon, though most of it was just a repeat of lore we already knew. But we did get a confirmation that Nibelung imprisoned the three moon sisters once he returned to Teyvat. And they also talked about these events from their own perspective, how the heavenly principles came from beyond the world and started operating it under their new rule. They weren't against it at first, well, except Sonnet, but once they saw how the heavenly principles ruled, they wanted to take some action. They talked about how the one we now call the heavenly principles cast down the divine nails as punishment for anyone who even tested the new rules and limits set up by their new ruler. But before they could act, the Dragon King Nibelung, who created them in the first place, returned and understood all of this as a betrayal, plus he needed weapons to fight against the primordial one. So he imprisoned the three moon sisters, and the Great War of Vengeance followed. It was interesting to hear their perspective about the heavenly principles, especially considering the celestial nails. The dragons viewed this very negatively as well, no surprises there, but so did the moon sisters, and this once again shows the heavenly principles are in a very great area. It's really hard to tell if their deeds are justified or not in general, but at least in this case, it seems to me like they really did something unjustified. But that's just my opinion. But with all that said, that will be it for this short video. I hope you enjoyed it and that you've even learned something new and interesting. I know I didn't really make a lot of videos recently, but I unfortunately had a lot to do and not enough time to do all of it, so I hope that once I have more time, I can get back into making more videos too. I expect to make a video about the new artifact lore soon, so for now, take care and I see you in the next one.